Welcome back, everybody. Tonight we're going to do some questions. I've done some episodes previously on bad answers, people asking questions, and they always get bad answers. So I decided tonight we would do a more casual video, and I'll go through and I'll answer some questions that my wife has found on the internet for us to answer. So anyway, I'm going to answer these questions. Hopefully, if I don't know the answer, I'll just make it up. But anyway, so this is my wife, Denise. I know y'all seen her in a lot of videos, so she'll be in a lot more soon. We're putting in a studio upstairs, so I'll be able to do more shoots while I'm talking. So I look forward to doing that. So anyway, go ahead, Denise. Hey guys, I just want to take this second of your time. If you guys would please hit like and subscribe, it would go a long ways toward helping our channel and help us keep making these videos. Thank you.
Okay, so our first question says, I'm a beginner looking to buy a mirrorless Canon full frame for portraits, group portraits, and sports. Any recommendations? My budget is to stay at or under $2K.
What are the things he wants to shoot again?
Portraits, group portraits, and sports. And needs to be a mirrorless Canon full frame.
Okay. And the problem here is you're asking too much of a camera. It's hard to find a camera that's going to do portraits well and turn around and do sports well. It's kind of two different categories. But how much say the budget was? Less than $1,000?
$2K.
$2,000. If you're looking for a full frame, I'd probably go with the Canon EOS R. If you can find it used for about $900. And do you need a lens too, or just a camera? Some sort of
versatile lens.
I would say find a used 24 to 70, 2.8, and a 70 to 210. If you have to go with the 70 to 210 f4, it's cheaper and lighter than the 2.8. You can probably get those used at MPB or KEH. Probably all that would be less than $2,000.
Okay. All right. Our next question says, does anyone have recommendations for a good flash for Canon EOS R5 mirrorless camera other than being a Canon Flash brand?
Yeah, there's a lot of options. Canon's expensive. If you go with one of Canon's top flashes now, you're looking at about $1,200, which is the same as Pro Photo, about $1,200. But Godox makes a great flash called the Godox V1. I know a lot of photographers using it. You can get it for about $250 and save you a whole lot. And a TTL works good on it too, which is the problem if you go with non-manufacturer brands. The TTL don't work so good, but in the Godox V1 it works really good. So go with the Godox V1.
And we have lots of Godox flashes. Okay, next question. Which Canon camera is best for focus but most cost-effective on a tight budget?
Did he give you a budget, just tight budget?
No budget mentioned.
Okay.
Just tight budget.
Well, it's kind of hard to say what a tight budget for somebody might be $10 and a tight budget for somebody else might be $1,500. So he just wants a camera that'll focus good.
Yes, and he says he has an old Canon 50D but struggling with it.
Okay. Again, the EOS R probably run about $900. You can get an RP for about $800. I don't like the RP very much. They don't have a real good dynamic range. If you can afford it, go with the Canon R6. And if you really want to fork out the money, go with the Canon R6 too, which is probably the best camera on the market.
But tight budget.
Oh, tight budget. Well, again, tight budget depends. Tight budget, some people is $10, and tight budget to other people is $2,000. So you can get an RP for $800 used. You can get an R6 for $900 or $1,000 used. And then the R6 and the R6 Mark II, you're going to be upward to $2,000. So whatever your budget might be.
All right, I am going to be purchasing a mirrorless camera, and I'm deciding between the Canon R6 Mark II and the R5. I shoot mainly weddings and rodeos, so autofocus is very important.
Weddings and rodeos, there's another wide variance. They're asking for a camera to do a lot for one camera. If you're shooting weddings, I think the Canon R6 Mark II is probably the best you can get. You can go with a Canon R5, but you're going to spend an extra $1,500, $2,000. And you're going to have every file you shoot is going to be 45 megapixels versus 20 or 24. Did he say Mark I or Mark II?
Said Mark II, and he wants to know about if the extra megapixels are really worth it.
They're not really. I think the 24 megapixels on the R6 Mark II, because not only is that plenty, you can still crop in, but if you take a 45 megapixel, every time you shoot a picture, you're shooting 45 megapixels. That's over 2.5 times the size of a 24 megabyte file. So you're eating up a lot of room in your hard drives, and you're not going to use that crop, but probably never, unless you're making billboards and you're cropping in 50%. But
okay.
So there you go.
All right. As an individual who is not tech savvy, I find Adobe Photoshop too complicated to even complete the first lesson. Can you recommend simpler image editing software that will suit my needs?
It kind of depends on what they're going to do in Photoshop. You can get Luminar Neo for, I don't remember if it was $100 or $200. That's a pretty cool program. I use it a lot, but there's a lot of programs because Photoshop kind of does everything. And then you got a lot of programs that'll do parts of what Photoshop will do. So it kind of depends on what you need to do in Photoshop. And then you can find that extra program somewhere else that'll do what he's looking to do in Photoshop.
I used Photoshop and I learned it pretty easily, but I don't know how to do. It depends what you want to do. I can do just what we need to do.
Yeah, me too. I'm not an expert at Photoshop. Right. I do what we need to do. But I do use a lot of other programs other than Photoshop too, like Luminar Neo. Topaz is a great upscale. Luminar Neo is one I probably go to if I'm not in Photoshop because it does a lot.
Okay. Next question. What are the best memory cards for a Canon EOS R100?
Stick with SanDisk are probably the most popular, but my favorite are ProGrade. ProGrade costs more. But which camera?
The Canon EOS R100.
R100. Okay, that's a fairly low end. So he's only got one memory slot. If I was using that and I was getting paid, I would definitely go with ProGrade. If you're getting SanDisk, make sure you get it from like B&H because if you order them off Amazon, you'll get fake ones occasionally. So you can check that. If you buy a 128 gig drive and then it comes in Amazon, you put it in your computer and it's only showing 64 gigs or you're having problems or it's slower than it's supposed to be, you probably got a fake card. So just go with ProGrade, and you can order them straight from ProGrade because they're never on sale hardly. They're always expensive, but they're good.
Okay. What are everyone's experiences purchasing a refurbished camera from Canon? I'm considering it, but I have some hesitations.
Absolutely do it. I buy as much of our equipment as I can refurbished. I think refurbished is better than brand new because you've already had the product come out brand new. Then something goes wrong at the beginning, and then Canon takes it, and the person's actually working on that camera to fix that specific problem. So I think I would rather buy a refurbished Canon over a brand new Canon. Plus, it's cheaper. I got our R6. I think we saved like $700 on it by buying it refurbished from Canon. And plus, if you're a Canon, I forget what it's called, Canon Pro membership or something like that, you can list all your equipment. And they give you points and stuff. Anyway, it helps you with shipping and getting your repairs done faster and that kind of stuff. But I hardly ever, knock on wood, have any repair issues with our Canon gear and hardly ever have since the 80s. So I've always been a Canon fan because Nikon, all my Nikon friends out there, don't be offended, but your cameras break all the time.
Okay. Thoughts on using a Canon EF 70-200 f2.8 USM3 on an RF adapter?
Yeah, it's fine. The adapters, you can't tell the difference. If you've got an RF lens or you're using an EF lens with the RF adapter, the focus is the same. Usually when you put on an adapter, quality drops off, but not in this case. You don't have any quality drop off. Not in the focusing department and not in the quality of the images.
Good to know. Okay, where does anyone print photos? I've used a couple of places, trying more.
Getting actual prints. I'm not sure. I think MPix probably does. You don't have to use regular mail. And maybe, what's the lab we used to use? Meridian Pro.
Meridian Pro.
I think Meridian Pro in Kansas, they might. I think they're actually down the road from each other, MPix and Meridian Pro. But I would have to call and check. You just look up the lab online, and they'll either tell you on their website or you can just call them and say, hey, do y'all process film?
We had good luck with Meridian Pro as far as customer services.
We did. Meridian Pro was really good. We switched to MPix when we went to our new website to show images from weddings because they are shoot-proof is who we use for our galleries, for our brides and stuff. And MPix is one of the labs that they have on their list. So we just go with MPix now, and both of them are fine labs.
Okay. Where can I find good resources for a beginning photographer?
Our YouTube channel.
There we go.
Now, there's lots of guys online. Jared Poland's a good one. Scott Kelby wrote a Photoshop book back in the early 2000s. I think I learned more from that book because I'm not a big book person, but he did a really good job writing that book. He's got a YouTube channel too, but I don't know. I think he's got like 40,000 or so subscribers. I would assume it would be a lot bigger than that, but I think last time I checked, he was around 40,000, which is a big channel, but I was expecting Scott Kelby to be up around 1 million or so.
You're much more do it.
Yeah, I don't read.
hands-on
She can read
than
and
reading.
do it. I can't read and do it. Just do it.
Okay. What camera and lens should I start out with?
You can't. That's just like asking, what do you want for lunch? Do you like Chinese? Do you like pizza? I mean, we don't know what you're going to do with the camera. It's just what camera and lens should I start out with?
What camera and lens should I start out with?
You got to figure your budget. You got to figure out, are you going to do it just for fun? If you're going to do it just for fun, take pictures of the family, you can go with a EF mount, which is your older Canon, like the Canon 6D. It's a full frame. You can get it for $300-400. Or if they want to go RF, they can go with the Canon R6. Or maybe the R6 might be a bit much, but go with the EOS R or the EOS RP. Or you can even go with the R8, which is full frame. It's kind of in the middle on price. The only problem with the R8 is the batteries are really low on those. You don't get much battery. And I don't know that they make any grips for the R8, so I could be wrong about the grips, but I know the battery, it dies really quick.
Okay. Should I be shooting in RAW or JPEG?
Both, because even if you're a beginner and you don't even know what RAW means, you may not even know what JPEG means. But your camera, when you shoot the picture, JPEG, like on your phone and stuff, when you take a picture, it's being processed like back in the days where we shot film. They would bring it to the lab, we would process it. Well, the camera, what JPEG is your camera processing that image for you. So when you go to do work on it, say Photoshop, whatever, you don't have as much leeway to work on it if you're JPEG. But if you shoot RAW, you can go in and do a lot more. So even if you're brand new and shooting and you don't even know what RAW means, just shoot in RAW, because once you learn how to do RAW, you can put it in a program called Camera Raw. You can go back and fix a lot of your pictures that didn't look good before because there's so much leeway in RAW. And there's different sizes. You always shoot large JPEG, and I always shoot large RAW, but there's Canon RAW, large C1, C2, I think, but I always shoot both as big as they'll go. Depends on how much space you have on your computer, but I would shoot both to begin with. It doesn't hurt. All it does is take up extra space on your computer and your hard drive and your memory card, but you can come back to it later.
Okay. How do I get those blurred backgrounds?
Well, most of the time there's a couple things that play in. You got your f-stop. You can take it down. If your camera goes to 2.8 or 1.8, take it down as low as you can go, but you've also got a distance. If I'm shooting a picture of Denise and I'm right here, I can be at a higher f-stop and still be blurred behind her because I'm so close to the focal plane on her face. But if I back up, I'm going to need that lower f-stop to get a blur behind her, because if you back up 12 feet, you still focus on her eyes and what'll be blurred behind her. But if I'm right here shooting, then I don't have to be at a super low f-stop to get that. But usually you want to low. Those lenses do cost more. Like anytime you get into a Canon L series lens, like 2.8 or lower, you're going to fork out quite a good bit for it. Like if you get a Canon EOS 70 to 210 f4, you can get one of those for about $1,200-1,300. If you go with that same camera, but you got a 2.8, and it doesn't even have image stabilization, you're looking at about $2,200-2,300. So you're going to be paying $500 to $1,200 extra for a lens that'll drop just one or so stop more. But the way you can beat that, if you're new, you can buy a 50 millimeter, because almost every manufacturer makes a 50 millimeter and they're pretty cheap. And most of those are around 1.8, 1.7.
Okay.
So if you want to start cheap, that's the way to go. Start with a 50 millimeter.
Why do my photos have a strange color tint?
Probably white balance. Canon's really good at auto white balance, but if you get like these lights we've got sitting here right now where we are on our couch, you'll notice they're all white lights, so they're 5600K. But if you go into a room that's got fluorescent lighting or something like that, you can do. Now, if you're shooting RAW, you can always change this later, and that's what I generally do. I put my camera on Canon auto white balance, and I shoot in RAW because I can always go back and adjust the white balance after I've taken the picture. Whereas if you're shooting just JPEG, you need to get it right. You'll need to do a white balance with your camera before you take the picture. Another reason to shoot in RAW.
Okay. Do you really have to edit all your photos?
I think professionals do, because we don't want anything going out that doesn't look good. I've always edited all of our photos. Even when we go, I remember when we would shoot film, we would take like 200 pictures at a wedding. It would be a big wedding. And now 200 pictures, we've only been there an hour before we've shot 200 pictures. So when we come home, we've got 1,000 to 2,000 pictures. I've got to go through and edit and crop and turn them from RAW to JPEG, and it's a drawn-out process. But I think all professionals should. Now, if you're just shooting for fun, you don't have to. But whatever you want to do in that route, you can. But if you're just starting out and you want to learn, and maybe you're wanting to build up to be a photographer, then it'd be a good idea to go ahead and learn how to edit. And
if you're married to a photographer, you never let pictures go out that have not been edited.
No, don't do it.
Okay. What does manual mode mean, and do I have to learn it?
Well, not really. You can shoot in other programs. Like I'm doing every Monday, we're doing a topic of learning photography from the beginning. And I'm going that last week, I went into your shutter priority and your aperture priority, which is so much easier to learn because a couple of things. If you want to deal with stopped motion, you need a faster shutter speed. So you can go into shutter priority, which is called TV on Canon. I don't know why they call it TV, but it's called TV, and that means shutter priority. So if you got something that's moving fast, like a car, and you want to stop the car, you want to go to like 1/500th of a second. If you're on a shutter priority, you set it to 500 and the camera will set everything else. If you want to go to aperture priority, like she asked me a while ago about the depth of field, the blurry backgrounds is what it's called. It's also called bokeh, depth of field, whatever you want to call it. You can set that on aperture priority and you can dial that as low as your camera will go. If it goes to 1.8, set the 1.8 and the camera will set everything else for you. It won't always be perfect, but it's a good spot. Sometimes if we're shooting a wedding, I try to stay in manual so I have full control over everything because ISO too high can cause grain and shutter speed too slow can cause blur. F-stop too low can cause out of focus. So sometimes every now and then you get a little bit out of whack. You can flip your camera over to shutter priority, get your bearings, see where you are, then you have to dial back in the manual, and then I can take it from there and make my fine adjustments from there.
But I think it's always good to learn how to use manual mode.
It is, but
in case you just run into something that.
But you can learn that through aperture priority and shutter priority, especially if you're just beginning to get your bearings. If you want to learn manual, go ahead, but I would still suggest, like I did last Monday's show, learn it through shutter priority and aperture priority.
That was the last question.
That was the last one. All right. How do you like our shirts? These are our new Studio Atlanta See the Difference shirts. These are just demo models. We're still working on getting the right ones made, but we'll have these hopefully available in a few months for you guys because I know everybody wants at least one or two in their house. But anyway, so hopefully those questions will help some of you guys that had questions about your cameras, and you don't have to go to one of these crazy Facebook sites where you get all the wrong answers. So hopefully, I think all those questions were answered, pretty right. They're pretty basic questions. So anyway, keep working, and my email's at the bottom. And if you have any questions, just email me at the bottom, and we're helping you guys out. Hit subscribe. Have a good day.